All right, good evening, members of council and administration, and for those who are streaming from the comfort of your home. Welcome to our council meeting this evening. A roll call. All members of council are present this evening, and I'd like to report out that we did have a electronic in-camera meeting, which was held earlier this evening at 6 p.m. which was closed to the public under section 239, 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, which permits a meeting or part of a meeting to be closed to the public if the following conditions are met and satisfied. The meeting is held for the purpose of educating and training the members, and at the meeting, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision of council and local board and certainly committee. At this meeting, council received training on the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act and councilors' records. A second electronic and camera personnel committee meeting was held at 6:30 p.m. and was closed to the public in accordance also under section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001, which permits a meeting or part of a meeting to be closed to the public when the subject matter being considered is labor relations or employee negotiations. So at this meeting, council gave direction on negotiations with QP Local 702.1, 702.2, and 702.3, full-time outside and inside workers and part-time inside workers for a new collective agreements. So members of council, disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this evening. All right, that's none declared, so we'll have that reflected in our minutes. Members of council, we have the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 9th, 2021. Our public council meeting of March 9th, 2021, the Curtis Drain. In the public council meeting, March 9th, 2021, the Dawson Drain. So I need a motion that those minutes of the regular council meeting and those public meetings be brought forward. Councillor Rico Tonio and Deputy Mayor Joey Ketty. Any errors or omission on those minutes as presented to you this evening? I've heard none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Supplementary agenda adoption. Would that classify with that? I'm looking at the clerk. Did we have that one item on the? Yes, on the policing. Yep. So we do have a sup that we need to deal with. So that's moved by Councillor Altanoff and supported by Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. No delegations to be heard this evening, members of council, but we do have communication, and I believe we have 15 items of communications. So if I could have that in receipt. Moved by Councillor Dowie, Councillor Jobin. Support. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Members of council, is there anything within those 15 items that you'd like to carry forward? Yes, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, both items 13 and 14 listed, I certainly would like to express some support. The number 13 being the 3-digit suicide prevention hotline. And that especially today where we are getting a great deal of just circumstances where people are feeling with despair for their situation. I think this is an easy, quick way that people can find help that can assist them in rebuilding. So I would like to have us show support for this initiative. Secondly, the item from Tweed with respect to joint and several liability, which recommends the AMO adoption, or the AMO recommendations of 2010. I believe we may have already endorsed this, but it's never too late to remind of that endorsement. And so I certainly want to show my support for that as well.
Okay, so you're prepared to move those two items, Councillor Dowie?
Yes.
Do I have support for those two items, members of council? Yes, Councillor Tonio. Any further questions or comments on those two items? Not all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right, thank you. We do have Communications K, which is action required. This is from the Office of the Solicitor General, and that was dated on March 17th, 2021. And that's for the OPP Detachment Board, and it is recommended that the March 17th, 2021 letter from the Office of the Solicitor General providing an update on the new Ontario Provincial Police OPP Detachment Boards under the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019, as well as the Q&A be referred to the Tecumseh Police Services Board. So if I could have that and moved by, and I need a supporter on that, Deputy Mayor Bichetti and Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any of that is carried. Okay, and committee minutes. We do have the business improvement area, February 17th, 2021 minutes. And if I could have a motion on those minutes. Councillor Houston and Councillor Jobin. On those minutes, any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, mostly just a comment. And I appreciate the efforts, past efforts on the on presenting the financials, but I found that their presentation certainly in this last report was a bit awkward and quite difficult with numbers kind of dispersed everywhere. Maybe just a kind reminder to their past presentations were, I thought, very good. This one, at least on the PDF file that I was looking at, had the numbers everywhere. So maybe just a recommendation or encouragement to them to kind of clean it up or use their past kind of approach for presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Altenhoff on that. Maybe just a question to Mr. Kitsos on the delivery of their budget, and that I know in the past they used to have an opportunity to bring their budget in front of our treasurer. So I'm just wondering if they had that opportunity to do this time.
This year, they did give me a preview early in advance, actually prior to delivery. But I think in general, I saw I can't recall, I have to say, I can't recall the final statements that they produced, because we generally have kept the same kind of statements. So we did see the proposal, but I don't know I can't recall, well, I should say I don't know the report that you're speaking of that was in the BIA meeting.
Okay, Councillor Houston and Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that the BIA is working to upload and include their agendas and all the material within eScribe. So this here to me, looks like a formatting error, which they've copied and pasted. But I know the clerk is going to be a delegate at the next BIA meeting, so we can bring this up and bring this back to them. The comment around the legibility of it, and just make them aware. But I'm not sure if putting it in eScribe may have caused that, or there might be something that they can do just to clean it up a little. But I can certainly bring it back, and I don't know what Councillor Dowie was maybe going to mention as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Houston. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, I was just going to say the same thing as Councillor Houston.
Okay, perfect. So then we'll certainly wait just to see if it was just, as you stated, a formatting issue that needs to be looked at. So on those minutes, I'm looking for adoption, and it's moved, and so I'll call the question. All in favor? Oppose? That's carried. Move on to the corporate services and our clerk. We have the again, the Tecumseh Business Improvement Area Board of Management. There's a director vacancy. And so I'm looking for a motion that entitled Tecumseh Business Improvement Area Board of Management Director vacancy be received, and that the resignation of Mr. Shane Malash as a director of the Tecumseh Business Improvement Area Board of Management Board be accepted. And further, that consideration be given to filling the vacancy on the board. And furthermore, that amending bylaw be prepared to further amend bylaw number 2019-33, being a bylaw to appoint directors to the board based on the direction of council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councillor Houston, support, comments?
Yes, if I may, Your Worship, we're looking for direction on filling the vacancy. So as council may recall, last fall, in accordance with our committee and board vacancy policy, we had called for applications to fill vacancies at that time on the board. We did receive more applications than there were positions available on the board. So we're asking council to give consideration to the 2 applications from the fall that were not appointed at that time to fill the vacancy at that time. We have 2 applications currently on record from a Carlin Bastani as well as a Leo Demars. And if we could seek some direction from council on considering selecting one of these members to fill the current vacancy.
Okay, then just add to the, and furthermore, amending bylaw, being bylaw to appoint directors of the board based on direction of council. We do have 2 individuals. We're looking at one of them, one of the 2.
Yes, we're looking for one selection.
Okay. And pleasure of council. Yes, Councillor Houston.
Through your worship, I'm happy to move that we appoint Leo Demars to the BIA of the 2 applicants that we received before.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a seconder on that? Deputy Mayor Bichetti. So then we'll add Mr. Demers to obviously to that furthermore portion of the resolution. All in favor? Oppose if any? That is carried. Move on to the COVID-19 economic recovery. That's the temporary outdoor patios of for the year 2021. Quite similar members of council as what we did last year. And so I'm looking again to move that the entitled COVID-19 economic recovery temporary patios be certainly received, and that a bylaw be struck 21-18 being a bylaw to adopt a temporary outdoor patio guidelines as appended to the clerk's office, and authorize the chief building official to inspect all temporary patios and require adjustments to the patio in order to address compliance with the guidelines, and be approved. And further, that the extension of existing liquor license to temporary patios on private property throughout the town of Tecumseh be supported for the duration of 2021, provided the businesses comply with the town's Tecumseh temporary outdoor patio guidelines. And furthermore, that the extension of existing liquor licenses to temporary patios on town property for the duration of 2021 be supported, provided businesses comply with the town of Tecumseh's temporary outdoor patio guidelines and enter into an encroachment agreement in form and content satisfactory to the town's solicitor. And furthermore, over that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute an encroachment agreement with businesses owners requesting to encroach onto town property for a temporary outdoor patio. And it also, I believe, Madam Clerk, this also complies with the provincial stature on the opening act as well for patios. That was in the report itself.
Yes, Your Worship. So this is in keeping with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission's extension of existing licenses onto temporary outdoor spaces for the duration of 2021. This sets out a clear guidelines for local businesses when seeking municipal approval, which is a condition of the AGCO that they obtain. These guidelines, we have reviewed them from last year's guidelines and compared them to and updated them in regulation to the current reopening framework issued by the province. We're also noting that we did have 10 applications last year for these businesses to support our local businesses, one of which was on town property. So we're looking to support our local businesses once again this year as they are able to reopen and to do so safely with an extended operating space through the use of these temporary patios.
Just one question, Madam Clerk, if I read right in the report itself as well, that they were talking about existing businesses and there was something about new businesses. And as we know, we have had new businesses open since 2020. And will that affect them, or will they be eligible to also, if they're in a position to extend, I suppose, their service area by including a patio?
Yes, so new businesses will have to first obtain a liquor license through the province, and then thereby be able to extend their licensed premises to a patio area. So they do need to have a license from the AGCO to operate the licensed patios.
Okay. All right, members of council, I need a mover and a seconder on the report. Councilor Hughes and Councilor Dowie. Any further questions or comments on the report? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Financial services. Statement of remunerations and expenses paid in the year of 2020. Move, Councilor Aldenhoff, Councilor Dowie. Questions or comments? Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Just for disclosure, I also receive $100 per meeting for the Essex County Library Board. So just to make residents aware of that.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Dowie. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Fire services. We do have a fire safety grant program from the Ontario Fire Marshal's office, and we're going to have Chief. Where is the chief? There he is, Chief Bondi, and maybe give us an explanation of where this grant will be utilized.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. So the report obviously outlines some good news that we received. March 11th, the province of Ontario announced a $5 million grant for fire services in Ontario. The grant is allocated between all fire departments within the province, starting at a base amount of $4,500 and then increasing there based on the population of the town. The program did come with some tight timelines. The application had to be received by the fire marshal last Friday on the 19th. And I submitted the application actually on the 17th, a couple days early. The projects that were included in the application were, number one, some in-house training software that allows for virtual training, a virtual training component of our training for our firefighters. The second being fire management software, which is actually, while it's a replacement for our current software, the new software would include mobile options to make inspections, number one, easier for our fire prevention officer, and it also includes the ability to attach files and pictures and whatnot making the information available for fire crews that would be responding to any locations after the fact. The third item is a digital camera for our fire prevention officer. The one she's currently using is fairly old and rather difficult to work with. So we thought getting her a new good quality one would be advantageous for her. The program also required that funds be spent by August 1st, and these, with the exception of the camera, the two software packages were already being investigated by myself and the Director of Information and Communication Services. So we are quite confident we can meet those timelines, and we should hear back from the Fire Marshal with his approval, in theory, subject to Council's approval tonight, of the projects that we were submitted. I'm available for any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions to Chief Bondi? Never refuse money.
Yep.
Especially when it comes from the government. So that's great. Good news, Chief. So I need a mover and a seconder on this motion. Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Tonio. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to information and communication services. We have our life cycle works plan, and Mr. Firth. There he is. You can bring that our report forward and the expenditures required for 2021.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. This is our standard report that we submit to council every year after the budget is approved, to just identify how we're spending our life cycle funds for the year for 2021. So over the years, since we started the life cycling program 15 or 16 years ago, we identified all the assets in the town and go through the estimated useful life of each, and each year we evaluate that. So before you tonight is our 5-year plan for how we look at allocating those funds. The top half are ones that are normally replaced every year. So we cycle through obviously PCs, network upgrades. We have many sites with video surveillance, probably over 70 or 75 cameras throughout the town that we rotate through over every 5 or 6 years to replace. AV systems in our boardrooms and meeting rooms and council chambers, et cetera. And our street photography is used with the GIS. The big ticket item this year is usually every 5 or 6 years, we do an overhaul of our server environment here at the town. So instead of having multiple servers doing individual tasks, we've gone the virtual server route, I want to say 10 years ago, and that less power consumption requirements for a server room, better redundancy, and better backups, real-time backups. So it's due this year. So we'll be looking at that. It's quite a large project that we'll be undertaking this year. You'll see the fire department software in there. That's just as a placeholder pending this grant that came up almost coincidentally with my report, as my report was being drafted. So we'll cross our fingers with the chief's report that he just presented, and we'll reevaluate the life cycle and the funding for that project. And there was some money left to be spent on our new ActiveNet software there at the end in deploying that to the public through the new website that they launched last week.
Okay, that's great.
Any
No,
questions?
yeah, I'm quite sure that the chief will remind us that 10-3 is his. All right. Any questions or comments on Mr. Firth's report? If not, then I need a motion that the 2021 expenditures of $195,000 from the Information and Communication Services ICS Lifecycle Reserve be authorized as per items outlined in attachment number 1. Councillor Jobin moves and Councillor Houston support. Any further questions or comments? Heard none. All in favor? Opposed, if any, of that is carried. Thank you. Next, we have Parks and Recreation, 2021-02. That's at Tecumseh Recreational Soccer Club sponsorship banner renewal agreement, and I believe that's for 5 years. Mr. Anthony, there he is.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of council. So just to kind of ease into these two reports, in the past, Tecumseh Soccer Club ran under one umbrella. They were Tecumseh Recreational Soccer and Tecumseh Travel Soccer. This year, they have agreed that they're going to operate under two separate umbrellas. One is the Tecumseh Recreational Soccer and one is the Tecumseh Soccer Club. The one we're dealing with first will be the Tecumseh Recreational Soccer Club. And they play the majority of their games on the LaSoar fields, the Optimus Park fields in that area. And so this renewal is a request to provide an additional 5 years on their agreement that just ended or will be just ending for sponsorship banners. They were allowed to put 5 sponsorship banners on each end of the fence, one on Tecumseh Road, the other on St. Gregory's Drive, as there was 2 individual parking lots. So that is the first report that is before you right now.
All right, move. Is it a question or prepared to move, Deputy Mayor?
No, I'm happy to move the report as recommended.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and supported by Councilor Dowie. Or
Yeah, I have a question, so we can get into it after the one we're debating the motion.
okay, are you okay? Then Councilor Tonio, I don't support. Councilor Dowie.
Okay, thank you, Worship. So just a question through you to the Director of Parks and Recreation. With respect to the banners themselves and their condition, and the number of banners for a given business, are there any caveats in the agreement for say it's if a business wishes to sponsor? Do they get the whole bank of 5, or are there limits to how many banners a particular business can advertise on? And second, for ongoing maintenance, are there maintenance obligations for the banners that are built into the agreement?
So I can deal with both questions, Mayor McNamara, to Councillor Dowie. The first question on the maintenance, yes, there is an agreement that they're to maintain them. I will say that we, the department, probably didn't enforce when they got to some of the points where it should have been removed as quick as we should have. And that's a lesson that we've learned, and we will certainly move forward and make sure that the association, both banner agreements that they're passed, that they're always in good shape and they're not tattered. And if they are, we would remove them and take them back to the association. The second issue was, no, we didn't foresee that as an issue when the first agreement was put in place. There were no restrictions as far as the number. There was just a number of 10 banners, 5 in each end, but there wasn't on an individual sponsor. I think it's fair to say that when we redo the agreement, that we can look at putting the 5 sponsors. They have to be 5 individual sponsors on each end of the banner. So five individuals on Tecumseh Road and 5 individuals on the other end, St. Gregory's.
Okay, thank you. That does sound very fair. Just to keep the you don't want to get lost in sign pollution, so to speak, and actually gives a good opportunity to encourage other businesses to support the sport as well.
And I think, if I may, just a final on that, one of the things that happened, they were short a couple sponsors, so I think one sponsor did end up taking more than one banner, but we will go to them this year. And in the agreement, even if there is if they only have 9 sponsors, then we won't allow a second one to be on the same side.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Altenhoff. Thank you, Worship. And through you, perhaps maybe a bit of a tangent, but to Mr. Anthony, what is the position, the current position, on the recreational soccer club with regards to any activities for this summer? If you don't mind, maybe the any members or any of our residents tuning in would perhaps appreciate hearing where they stand right now. Thank you.
Okay, I will try to again through the mayor to Councillor Altenhoff. Been a very difficult year. There's no roadmap. Unfortunately, you know, we've been trying with minor hockey right now to get them to be able to finish their last 4 weeks of their program if we move to Orange. You know, it's all contingent on a Friday afternoon announcement. So currently right now we're in red. They're allowed 25 outside, but they are not allowed to play games. They're only allowed to do skill development. So until we move to either orange, yellow, or green, there are no gameplay or no scrimmages. They can only do skills development, but they can have 25 individuals out there. They are to social distance. So I think the recreational program is going to try to tailor the program this year from our discussions, maybe reduce the number of players per team, even if we go to orange, red, and yellow, have more teams, but be respectful of what's going on and try to keep as many socially distanced as possible. But again, it's very difficult right now. You see where we're going, and you know, we have to be prepared on a minute's notice to tell them that, you know, you may be shut down if we go back to gray lockdown as well.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, yes, Councillor Jobin.
Thank you through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Anthony as well. I've recently had conversations with some of the McAuliffe Park soccer group. They have some pretty interesting incentives and ideas. I was just wondering if you've been in touch with them in the last few months. And if not, I know that they are interested in having discussions with the town.
Yes, I can say, Councillor Jobin, that we are always in constant contact with all of our user groups, McAuliffe Soccer being one of them. Mr. Personati and also Egidio Moscow, really, we work well together. And so if they have something new that they got planned, I know at the end of the year, we guided them through. They came out and they ran skill sessions. They didn't really run their organized program last year, and we were able to work with them. And I think they ended up with a good end of the season. And certainly, I'm sure that's what they want to look at. But we have been in discussions, but if they have something new they want to bring forth, we're certainly open to meet with them.
For sure. Okay, I'll send them your way again. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments on the recreational side on the banners? If not, a motion, please. Oh, I already have a motion, sorry. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then furthermore, the Tecumseh Soccer Club sponsorship banner, that's the other group, which is basically the same thing. So it's just a motion on that. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councillor Houston. If there's no further, yes, go ahead, Councillor or Councillor Anthony. Boy, you got, no, I don't think you want our job, but anyway, sorry about that.
That's okay. I just wanted to point out on this one, in addition to the banner request, they are making their home as Buster-Ream Park, which they have in the past. This is the travel portion of it. And as the two organizations now are under different umbrellas, they'll have some equipment that they need to line the fields and et cetera. So they've asked permission at their cost to put down a cement pad and put a 10 by 15 building, I believe it is, down, so they can have it stored. And then they would have home of Tecumseh Recreational Soccer on the side of the shed that they're going to put up. So that's the only difference between the two of versus the Tecumseh recreational soccer.
And I would assume that, Mr. Anthony, that would be to the town standard, the building.
Yes, we will work with our building department. I think the shed is only 10 by 15, so it falls with underneath the permit, but it would be a shed that would be lockable so that their equipment would go in there. It would be a nice shed, a new shed that certainly wouldn't be something that would be an eyesore to the residents or the neighbors or anybody driving by or using the park.
Okay. Any further questions or comments to Mr. Anthony on this report? All right. Move. And it's already been moved, supported. All in favor? Oppose, if any? That is carried. Okay. We'll move on to also our recreational 2021-04 Essex Power Youth and Community Fund. Those are, if you recall, members of council, that's the money that we received every year from Essex Power Corporation on their youth, Powering Youth Community Fund. That's the $10,000 that eligible every year. But on that fund, I think there's some carryover, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, this is the annual funding that Essex Power supports their 4 member municipalities, and it's been an excellent partnership over the years. We've been able to introduce a lot of youth activity and provide a lot of youth with free activity, which certainly, has drawn great numbers. Unfortunately, again, in 2020, with the COVID effects, we weren't able to utilize all the funding because we weren't having in-person activities or activities that could utilize that funds. So Essex Power has allocated the $6,700 as a carryover from last year, plus the $10,000 this year. So we will have $16,700 to put on community programmings for youth through the partnership with that Essex Power.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions or comments on the report? If not, then if I could have a mover and a seconder on the report, Councillor Ottenhoff, supported by Councillor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any of that is carried. Thank you. Move on to Planning and Building Services, 2021-13. That's a housekeeping amendment to Sandwich South zoning bylaw 85-18, and that's the restriction of cannabis greenhouse operations in the agricultural A zone in accordance with the policies of the Tecumseh new official plan scheduling of a public meeting. So I'm looking, Mr. Anthony, Mr. Hillman. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to council. Very briefly, council will recall that a new official plan was adopted on February 23rd. That is now sitting with the County of Essex, which is our approval authority for those types of documents, and is under review. And we're hoping to hear some good news shortly based on some communication with the county planner. But in the meantime, we do have a policy that is an expression of council's interest. And there are certain things that we just want to ensure are taken care of sooner than later. And one of those is a much more robust policy environment as it relates to greenhouse and in particular cannabis greenhouse operations. Just very quickly to remind council, the policy approach that has been adopted is that greenhouses are permitted in the agricultural area under the new official plan, but they are now subject to site plan control, which is a tool available to the town to ensure that various matters are dealt with. The second important component is that cannabis greenhouse operations are permitted, but they do require a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment so that there is a more complete review that is undertaken through a public process in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. And they as well would be subject to site plan control. And there are criteria established in the new official plan of the matters that council would have regard to. And finally, mushroom operations, as is currently the case, are permitted but subject to rezoning and site plan control. The proposal, the request to council is that we bring our zoning bylaw just up to speed to reflect that greenhouse operations for cannabis operations are not permitted as of right in agriculturally zoned lands, which would then trigger the need for a rezoning process and to make them subject to site plan control if any proposals were to come forward to the municipality. Part two of the request this evening to council is that council authorized the preparation of a bylaw to amend lands that are subject to site plan control so that it is clearly established. And this is under a separate section of the Planning Act, Section 41. And this is a bylaw that council can have consideration to without public meetings. And what we're proposing is that the bylaw be amended to clearly establish that greenhouse operations, cannabis greenhouse operations, mushroom operations are in fact subject to site plan control. And that is a bylaw that's required under the Planning Act. So the request before council is to authorize proceeding to a public meeting. And just as a point of clarification, the report you will have noted did make reference to a prior housekeeping amendment that deals with agricultural lands that are inside a settlement area, inside an area identified for future urban development. What that bylaw amendment is proposing to do is to establish that greenhouse operations, intensive farm operations, mushroom farms are not permitted as of right in those areas. We are bringing back a final report on that matter, which had a public meeting in the late 2020 to bring back a recommendation to council to adopt a bylaw to pass again under section 34, just summarizing the input that was received at the public meeting and to recommend a form of bylaw for consideration for adoption. So those are two separate housekeeping amendments that accomplish similar things, but require separate processes. So Mr. Mayor, with that, certainly glad to take any questions from council.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Hillman. I do have one question. When you talk about bringing this under site plan control, and does that also include in the site plan, for example, I know we've had a lot of issues in the Kingsville, Leamington area in regards to light pollution and so forth. So drawing curtains and so that would all be part of that site plan control agreement.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, in fact, those are exactly the types of matters that will be dealt with, whether it's night curtains, design mitigation to address lighting, odors, matters of potential conflict, depending on the nature of the lands that are surrounding. So those are the types of details that would be incorporated into a site plan agreement. It is a tool that certainly gives a municipality greater authority and capacity to establish some rules. There may be some other approaches that are also available outside of the Planning Act that council will recall we are looking at. There was a bylaw passed recently, I believe, in Leamington with respect to the controlling of light, so on, and it's under the Municipal Act. That's a little bit of a separate control process that we are continuing to look at with the intent to bring something back to council. But certainly site plan control would allow us to bring in measures to control that type of feature of a greenhouse operation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hillman. Any further questions or comments to Mr. Hillman? Then if I could have a motion that the report entitled Housekeeping Amendment Sandwich South Zoning Bylaw 85-18 Restriction of Cannabis Greenhouse Operations in the Agricultural A Zone in accordance with the policies of the new Tecumseh official plan scheduling of a public meeting be approved, and that the scheduling of a public meeting to be held on April 27, 2021 in accordance to the Planning Act for the proposed housekeeping zoning bylaw amendment to the Sandwich South zoning bylaw 85-18 to restrict cannabis greenhouse operations in the agricultural A zone in accordance with the policies of the Tecumseh new official plan be authorized, and further that a bylaw making the development of new mushroom greenhouse and cannabis greenhouse operation subject to site plan control in accordance with section 10.4.3 of the new Tecumseh official plan be adopted. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti and supported by Councilor Jobin. Any further questions or comments on the report? Having heard none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, again, Planning and Building Services 2021-14, zoning bylaw amendment 3425, 11th concession, scheduling of a public meeting. Mr. Hillman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean, if we were to go to page 129 of the agenda, I think there's a figure that would assist in this discussion. Mr. Mayor, there are a number of councillors who will recall that in 2014 and maybe slightly prior to that, the owner of the lands that are shown here, which are the corner of County Road 42 and the 11th concession road, was the subject of some discussion between the county and the landowner. And I'm quickly going to just refer to the colored areas because there's a map that would better set the context for this that we'll go to. There was a request to subdivide the property into 4 lots. And you'll see them identified here as the red, the blue, the green, and the orange. Ultimately, a house was built on part 2. It exists there today. And there was an extension of a sanitary sewer that was approved by council after the owner of the land at the time undertook an analysis to demonstrate that the sanitary system could take the flows subject to other improvements that were made elsewhere in that sanitary sewage system. And just very quickly, when you look at this drawing, you'll see an area that is labeled Part 5. That is the area that was transferred from the prior owner to the County of Essex for the Banwell Road, as we call it, realignment. So Sean, if we then turn to page 130, that, Mr. Mayor, illustrates to some extent the County Road 42 and the 11th Concession Road intersection. The subject lands that are being considered this evening are outlined in green. And you can see the sanitary sewer just to help understand what happened in 2014 that was extended southerly from the existing orange sanitary. The red was constructed by the property owner at that time. It was undertaken with the support approval of council, ultimately leading to the construction of the home that you can see in the image that's on the screen. This evening, the application that we're considering is for a rezoning of those lands that are outlined in green to allow them to move into a residential zone. The lands that are shown as green lines, those are lots that were put before the Committee of Adjustment actually last evening to support the construction of one home on each of the lots on full municipal services. That was granted by the committee. And of course, there is an appeal period and it was conditional to this rezoning moving forward. The applications are timely. This is an area that is a remnant parcel of land. It's sort of a leftover piece after the county acquired the shaded area for the future County Road 43. Road realignment for Banwell, there was this small finger of land that was left over, and ultimately in the new official plan is part of the Tecumseh North settlement area and is designated residential in the official plan. So the request this evening is to have authorization from council to proceed to a public meeting as required under the Planning Act to consider these lands for rezoning from their current agricultural zone to a residential zone to permit their use for single unit dwellings on the properties. Mr. Mayor, the planning report summarizes the policy environment that we're bringing this forward in, which is provincial policy, county OP, and our local official plan as well. And from our opinion and review, it's our position that it's certainly in keeping with those policy documents. So if there are any questions, I'm certainly available, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hillman. Any questions or comments to Mr. Hillman at this time? Yes, Councilor Jobin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually not pertaining to those lands specifically, just that drawing is different from what I've seen from the county drawings in reference to the Banwell roundabout extension there. So the shaded area, the black thick line is a buffer and the shaded area is the road. It just seems so much closer to the houses than any county designs that I've seen.
So if we go back to this drawing, keep in mind that that is the swath of land that has been purchased by the county. And secondly, that it does continue to the north through the former Danello lands, correct?
Okay.
So there will be a roundabout right at County Road 42 where the shaded area ends. That shaded area will continue to the north and then realign with existing Banwell Road near the high school. Near the actually Tecumseh Vista. And also keep in mind that the road itself is positioned inside that road allowance. So the road does not extend itself physically to the edge of the thick black line. It is well within that swath of land that has been purchased by the county. So there would be considerable distance from these lots to the actual platform of the road.
Okay, thank you. It just looks different from what I've seen. So, okay, but otherwise nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Jobin. If there's no further questions, then what we need to do is to schedule a public meeting on April 27th, 2021 at 5 p.m. in accordance with the Planning Act for the application submitted by Dana Azar to amend the Sandwich South zoning bylaw 8518 by rezoning 8.47 hectare, which is 1.16 acre property situated on the west side of the 11th Concession Road, approximately 120 meters, 393 feet south of its intersection with County Road 42, 342511 Concession Road, from agricultural zone A to a site-specific residential zone 1 R1-19, in order to establish specific minimum lot area and frontage provisions to facilitate the creation of 3 new residential lots and the future construction of 3 single unit dwellings be authorized. Moved by Councillor Tonio and Deputy Mayor Riquetti. If no further questions or comments, all in favor? Opposed, if any of that is carried. Now we'll move on to bylaws, and the clerk shall read our bylaws for this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening, we just have the one bylaw, which is bylaw 2018, and that authorizes and approves the temporary patio guidelines that were established by a report earlier this evening. We're respectfully asking for first and second readings to this bylaw, and if appropriate, third and final.
All right, reading, Councillor Jobe and Councillor Houston. On, you want 2 readings first? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And no further questions, then a third and final reading is in order. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Any unfinished business? Then I'll move on to new business. Yes, Councillor Dowie and Deputy Mayor Riquetti.
Well, thank you, Worship. First, I'm fulfilling a request of many constituents to give a thank you to the City of Windsor recycling crews from last Friday. It was a very windy day, and it appears as if many of the crews took the opportunity to stack the boxes so that they wouldn't blow away during that wind. And so just want to send through council tonight the sincere thanks for those who took the extra effort to do that. The second item I wanted to raise, it's a request I received independently about the recognition of our Aboriginal heritage, as has been customary in other municipalities and governments that are about the traditional land acknowledgements. And so I know AMO's got some guidelines on this, and I'm wondering if this is something that we might be able to bring forward to policies and priorities to investigate.
Yes, that's proper. Any further new business? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question, for Mr. Anthony. I know that the weather's getting nice now and there's a lot of people using our parks. There's been a lot of dogs off leash, whether it be Lakewood Park or McAuliffe. When they call me, is there a number or an individual that they can call on the spot rather than, trying to figure out, by the time someone comes that they're away? So if, whether it be a staff or the dog catcher, could we maybe perhaps put something on the website as a reminder that we have a beautiful dog park for those that want to do off leash? But again, it's dangerous where when they run, as you know, dogs are friendly and they see a toddler, they'll run to them, not knock them down. You want to make sure that the parks are safe, and when families go out there, they don't need to be in fear that a dog's running loose that might come up at them. So just, I don't know if we could advertise on the website, or is there a number, an individual that they can call on the spot when they see that?
Through the mayor, and I'll look to Laura for assistance as well, but usually it's the animal control officer that we call. And if we do hear that there's a park that's really a high priority, or there's a lot of complaints, we will notify the dog or the animal control officer to attend that park during those times, but Laura, maybe you can.
Thank you, Paul, and through you, your worship. So yes, the number they should be contacting is our animal control officer. It is advertised on the town's website, but we can certainly do some additional social media and other publications in that respect. And when they do call, if they can provide the location and the times of when these are occurring, and that will help us in dispatching the animal control officer, actually it's the dog control officer, to those areas during those times.
Very good. Thank you.
Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And on that point, would it be worthwhile to consider the installation of perhaps just a little bit of signage to inform, the park users of this, if necessary, of this contact? Through administration, through you.
We can certainly look at that. We do have signs up that are all over, dogs on off leash. The residents don't tend to contact the animal control officer. They tend to contact town hall or stop one of our staff persons. And then they look for the animal control officer to show up at certain times. We'd have to go back to all the signs, and there's numerous signs, but throughout all the parks that do say, dogs must be on leash outside of the dog park, obviously.
Councillor Altenhoff.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And through you to Mr. Anthony, again, the reason I guess I bring this forth is just, maybe to streamline the communications and maybe potentially increase efficiency. It seems that they're ultimately going to go to, or somehow it'll go to the animal control. But if the information can come from those individuals who see it, observe it, it's probably best from them. I'm just making this suggestion, an informed individual is probably the best situation, or, informing them is probably the best thing. And, then, if we're provided details, sometimes that's lost in communication, and I don't think we want that to happen. But, and I'm not, I'm just asking if it's not that big of an investment and perhaps just a small addition that we could add to the signage, it may benefit everyone. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just on this, in order for there to be follow-up by enforcement, they have to actually witness the event happening. And so to the clerk's point, the best that we can hope to do at a given moment in time is to record the time of day and the location so that we can ask the animal control officer to step up patrols in that area at that time of day in order to observe and see the activity while it's occurring. So for an individual to observe it and call the animal control officer, he can't be there instantaneously. And so there isn't, there's a disconnect there in terms of what effect we're trying to achieve. And so this way, if there's a pattern, which often there is because folks tend to walk their pets roughly the same time every day, and that this becomes noticeable, we can then gain the cooperation of the animal control officer to be there at that time, and then hopefully do some public education. Now, in Leslie's defense, she has been pushing this out on social media over the last several weeks as the weather has turned favorable. There seems to be more and more of it, and she has been pushing the message fairly diligently, and will continue to. I think she's even going to work it into the mayor's video next week, so there'll be another avenue of getting it out there.
Okay, any further new business?
Actually, sorry, one more little thing. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I could, just going back to Councillor Dowie's suggestion about referring the Aboriginal Heritage Traditional Land Acknowledgement to P&P Committee. If we could just have a resolution of council to that effect so that we demonstrated that all of council is favorable to using our resources for that purpose, that would be most appreciated.
Not a problem. Moved by Councilor Dowie, supported by Councilor Altenhoff. That we certainly look at acknowledging the lands that our municipality does sit. And so with that, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Anthony, I notice I hope you're still there because yep. I've got a couple of questions. Obviously, I certainly I want to acknowledge that Lakewood Park is a crown jewel in the region, no doubt. But is there any way that we can get more refuge containers, especially around where the benches are? Some do have them and some don't. And you know, lately I've been walking in the park quite a bit with my my little grandsons, and I've noticed that you know, I was picking up a lot of Tim Horton cups and so forth all along the benches, and so if we could have that looked at, certainly as well. And the other is the disposable bags for obviously folks who are walking their dogs. You know, at one time we had issues with geese. Now we got some folks not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we want to make sure that we can put even a few more of those stations with the bags there for people to clean up after their pets. And we certainly don't mind them walking, but certainly they need to deal with that as well. And finally, my last question, have we found a replacement for our goose patrol?
We haven't directly yet. We've reached out to a number. We do have an individual who has some labs that he thinks he can do a similar job. So we're engaging him right now to try that out. We're looking at all alternatives outside of that, but there doesn't seem to be another handler locally that has the collies, which I think is the best, obviously, solution, because last year it was a great year. So we're still actively searching. We're going to try this other provider that says that they might be able to do it and see what happens. And we've reached out to Beachco, but we haven't heard back from the individual. So I'm going to reach out to another contact I have at Beachco to see if they do have their own collie or what service they may use if it's somebody different.
They have a den of foxes on Beach Grove, and,
okay,
and that's taking care of the
geese.
Yeah, nobody says anything, but anyway, yeah, if we can find obviously an alternative, that would be great, because you're absolutely right. They did a phenomenal job last year. It's unfortunate that things didn't turn out this year. That's it for me. So with that, if there's no further new business, members of council, then a confirmatory bylaw on the to confirm the proceedings of the Tuesday, March 23rd regular meeting of council, be given first, second, and certainly third reading. Councilor Altenhoff, Councilor Dowie, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Any notices of motion, members of council? None. Then our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 30th, 6 p.m. It's actually a public council meeting, Friday, Victoria Development. Thursday, also April 8th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Another special council meeting, and that's the Riverside Trail. And Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, starting at 5:45 p.m., our quarter revision, Curtis Drain. 6:15, the quarter revision on the Dawson Drain. And conclude with our 7 p.m. regular council meeting. So with that, if there's no further business, members of council, certainly adjournment is in order. Councilor Tonio and Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Members of council and administration, I certainly bid you a good evening, and those who are streaming from the comforts of home as well. And so with that, I bid you good night.